All right, beautiful people. So today we're talking about solving equations that have division to begin with. So yesterday we talked about equations that had multiplication and solving them that way. Now we're talking about equations that have division. So I really want to stress this right now. You cannot just guess and check an answer anymore. Okay? Guessing and checking will work some of the time, but it's not going to work all the time. It does not work. Okay. You need to start using inverse operations. Use inverse operations, okay? Yesterday I was helping a lot of people and I noticed that people were like, well, I guessed this number and that's how I got it. Or I knew that these two numbers multiply together. You have to use inverse operations, okay? Because you are not going to be able to just guess and check all the time. Especially in this section where you have division, because the problems get tougher because now we're dealing with fractions. So you have to use inverse operations. If you are not using inverse operations, you are going to have a very hard time finding the right answer. Okay? So let's talk about inverse operations. If I have problems that have division, what is the inverse of division? Multiplication. Okay? Multiplication and division are inverses because they undo each other. If I've multiplied something by 3, I can divide it by 3 in order to invert it, or in order to do the opposite operation, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about multiplicative inverses. So if I have 2/3, okay, 2/3, I want to find the inverse. The inverse of 2/3 is basically I take my numerator and denominator and I switch them. So the inverse of 2/3 is 3/2. Oh, that was a bad 3. I apologize. Is 3/2. Now let me show you why. Okay, if I take 2/3 and I multiply it by 3/2, or 3/2, then I get 6/6, which is 1. I have basically undone that number. Okay, when you have a multiplicative inverse, it undoes the other number. It makes the other number become 1. Let's try another one. So if I start with 5/7, let's find the inverse of 5/7. Just like with 2/3, I'm going to find the inverse by flipping the numerator and denominator. So the inverse is 7/5. And I can check it. I can go 5/7 times 7/5, and I can check this. 5 times 7 is 35, and 7 times 5 is 35, which is equal to 1. Okay, multiplicative inverses are just flipping the fraction so that the numerator and denominator switch places. You need to know this because sometimes you're going to get an equation that has a fraction next to a variable. If there is a fraction next to a variable, you use the inverse fraction. When you use the inverse fraction, the original fraction goes away. So let's do a problem like that. Okay, so I'm going to draw a line. Okay, so I'm going to try this one. 1/2 of x equals 5. So this one has a coefficient that is a fraction right here. This 1/2 is the coefficient. The coefficient is a fraction. So for these ones, we have to multiply by the inverse. So 1/2's inverse is I'm just flipping the 1 and the 2. The inverse of 1/2 is 2/1. So then I'm going to multiply by 2/1. Okay, but because this is a balance, because it's got the equal sign, I need to multiply the other side by 2/1 as well. Okay, so then on the left-hand side, I get 2/2x, and on the right-hand side, I get 10/1. So 2/2 becomes 1x equals 10.